You'd think after 5 years of dating, I'd be used to Sarah's impulsive nature. "Let's go camping," she exclaimed one Thursday evening, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of a spontaneous adventure. I'm more of a plan every detail kind of guy, but her enthusiasm is infectious, so I agreed. By Friday afternoon, we were driving to a campground she'd found online that boasted 5 stars and rave reviews. The place was called Whispering Pines, tucked away in a dense forest, the kind of spot that makes you forget the world outside. As we pulled up to the check-in cabin, the host greeted us with a smile so wide it could have spanned the river we'd just crossed. He was a peculiar guy, lanky with a shock of white hair, and had this old-timey way of speaking that was charming at first. He wore a chain with a pendant that caught the light. It was a strange symbol that looked like a cross between a star and an eye. "Got just the spot for you," his voice a bit too eager. "Nice and private, right on the edge of the woods." That should have been our first clue. The campground was practically empty, yet he put us as far away from the other campers as possible. But the site was beautiful, so we didn't question it. As the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in hues of deep purple and orange, the host emerged from the shadows of the encroaching night to check on us. The easygoing demeanor he had exhibited earlier had faded, now replaced by a piercing gaze that seemed to bore right through us. A chill ran down my spine as he absent-mindedly toyed with his pendant, the odd symbol etched into it catching the dying light in a way that made it seem to move, to almost dance with a life of its own. Sarah, curious and ever the conversationalist, inquired about the peculiar piece of jewelry. His fingers tightened around the metal, and his eyes darted away, a stony silence falling over him before he muttered, almost defensively, that it was a family heirloom. His voice held a tremor of something unspoken, a reverence or perhaps a fear, and it was then that I felt a profound unease settle in my stomach. The night was when things got really weird. The host had this habit of popping up out of nowhere, always watching, always lurking. We caught him a few times, just beyond the firelight, staring at us. We laughed it off, nerves hidden behind uneasy smiles. The fabric walls of our tent provided little comfort as we nestled into our sleeping bags, the day's unease and unwelcome shadow in the back of our minds. That's when the night's silence was shattered by an unsettling symphony. It started as a whisper, a collective murmur that swelled from the depths of the forest, primal and insistent. The chanting was rhythmic and low, resonating through the ground beneath us, as if the very heart of the earth had found a voice. It was a dark, otherworldly drone that pulsed with an unnatural cadence. Summoning every ounce of courage we had left, we decided that ignorance in this instance was not bliss. It was a trap. The need to understand what we were up against, to face it rather than cower in our flimsy shelter, propelled us into the ink-black night. Each step towards the haunting drone felt like moving through molasses, the darkness a tangible force that seemed intent on swallowing us whole. As we edged closer, the moon carved out a silver clearing from the oppressive dark, a stage set for the host who stood at its center. His silhouette was an eerie statue against the luminescence, his back to us as he leaned over an heavy-looking tome. The book was a relic, its leather binding cracked and worn, the pages yellowed and curling. It looked as though the secrets it held were so heavy, so powerful, that they threatened to disintegrate the very fibers of its being. The host's voice rose and fell in a chilling litany, the words undulating through the night air in a language that seemed to predate time itself. It slithered into my ears, a serpentine sound that coiled around my mind, sending shards of ice through my veins. The air around us grew colder, the atmosphere charged with an energy that was as terrifying as it was transfixing. He must have sensed us because he suddenly stopped and turned, his eyes finding ours in the dark. "Ah, you heard the call," he said, his voice disturbingly calm. "Would you like to learn a little about what I'm reading?" The host's offer hung in the air like a noxious gas, and a primal instinct screamed within us to flee. Without a single word exchanged, Sarah and I spun on our heels, our breaths ragged with fear as we stumbled through the underbrush. We crashed into our tent, our hands trembling uncontrollably, fumbling with the stakes and zippers in a frantic bid to escape. The darkness seemed to press in on us, smothering, as the host's laughter rang out a cacophony of madness that seemed to warp and weave through the trees, enveloping us in its sinister embrace. We hurled our belongings into the car with a wild urgency, the engine roaring to life as if it too sensed the need to escape the madness of whispering pines. Tires spun on the damp earth, propelling us out of that cursed clearing and onto the road, our only guide the pale wash of the headlights cutting through the oppressive black. We drove in a silence punctuated only by our heavy breaths and the pounding of our hearts. The once comforting darkness of the forest, now a labyrinth of terror we were desperate to leave behind. The glow of civilization's streetlights eventually welcomed us, a lighthouse beacon guiding weary sailors from stormy seas, but the sanctuary of home couldn't erase the scars of that night. To this day, in the deep silence that sometimes settles over the city, a chill slithers down my spine as echoes of that otherworldly chant seem to find me. It's in those moments, when the boundary between past and present blurs, that I catch myself holding my breath, listening. And I can't help but shiver at the thought of what secrets the host might have revealed, what darkness he was beckoning us to witness. You know that feeling when you're about to do something you'll probably regret, but the thrill is just too much to resist? That's how it felt when Mike and I clipped on our skis, ignoring the well-worn trails for the untouched powder of the backcountry. We were adrenaline junkies, two best friends with a GoPro and a death wish, or so our moms liked to joke. The sky was a steel gray canvas, ominous clouds lurking on the horizon, but we were too caught up in the rush to care. We carved through the snow, whooping and hollering until the first snowflakes began to fall, gentle at first, then relentless. The wind picked up, howling like a pack of wolves on our trail, and in no time, we were in the thick of a storm that could swallow us whole. Visibility dropped to 0. We were off-piste, and now we were off course too. Panic clawed at my chest, a stark contrast to the cold that was seeping through my layers. Mike spotted it first, the shadow of a cabin barely visible through the blizzard. We made a beeline for it, our skis clumsy on the rapidly accumulating snow. Once inside, we were hit by an eerie silence, the storm's fury muffled by the cabin's log walls. We managed to send out our coordinates to the ski resort in a text, the battery icon flashing its final warning before the screen went dark. The last vestige of the outside world, gone. As the last light of day surrendered to the encroaching darkness, a series of bizarre events began to unfold within the confines of the cabin. The first was a sudden, jarring crash that echoed through the silence. A lone picture frame, previously undisturbed, plummeted from its perch on the mantel. The glass front splintered upon impact with the stone hearth, sending jagged shards skittering across the floor. Mike and I leaped to our feet, hearts hammering against our ribs, exchanging uneasy glances as we nervously chuckled, trying to mask our mounting dread with hollow bravado. Outside, the wind's howl became a sinister symphony, and with it came the dance of shadows across the frosted windows. They twisted and writhed like dark wraiths performing a silent ballet, their forms elongating and contorting into impossible shapes. No light source could account for these specters that seemed to mock us from just beyond the thin veil of glass. Yet it was the trap door, a solid slab of weathered wood set into the cabin floor, that held our rapt and terrified attention. At first, the sound beneath it was so soft, a mere suggestion of movement, that we convinced ourselves it was nothing more than the wind's fingers prying at the cabin's foundation. But the sound persisted, a soft, deliberate scratching that spoke of intention, of something sentient exploring the barrier between us. We dragged our sleeping bags to the farthest corner of the room, our eyes flicking back to the trap door with every rustle and creak of the gloomy timbers. As the fire dwindled to its last embers, the cabin groaned and settled around us, each noise a potential harbinger of unseen horrors. Our voices were whispers, the words tumbling out in nervous jests about apparitions and unseen haunts, but the laughter that followed was tinged with real fear. The trapdoor became an object of silent terror. Its very presence in the room felt like a taunt, an invitation to uncover the secrets it jealously guarded. But neither of us had the courage to lift its latch. All we desired was the sanctuary of daylight, the promise of escape from whatever lay in wait beneath us. The relief we felt at the sound of knocking come dawn was indescribable. A ranger stood at the door, his face a mask of concern. We grabbed our gear, more than ready to leave the cabin and its mysteries behind. But as we crossed the threshold, a gust of wind tore through the cabin, fierce as a scream. The trapdoor flew open with a bang, revealing a gaping maw of darkness below. The stairs descended into the black, their end lost to the shadows. I felt a pull, an almost magnetic draw to the unknown that lay beneath. Mike grabbed my arm, his grip tight, and we backed away. We didn't need to find out what was down there. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. As we followed the ranger out into the clearing, the storm now a mere whisper, I couldn't shake the image of the open trap door from my mind. What had been waiting beneath our feet? What had watched us through the night? We never went back to find out. But sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear the faintest scratching, and I wonder,